A former slot floor manager just broke their NDA, and what they revealed could change how you gamble forever. This person spent 12 years inside one of Las Vegas's largest casinos, watching thousands of players drain their accounts on machines specifically engineered to keep them losing. They've agreed to share internal documents and employee testimonies that expose exactly which slot machines are designed to take your money the fastest, and more importantly, which two machines actually give you a fair shot. Casinos deliberately place their worst performing machines in high traffic areas where you're most likely to see them. And what I'm about to share comes directly from the people who programmed, maintained, and monitored these devices. Knowing this information before your next casino visit could be the difference between a fun night out and a devastating financial loss. Walk into any casino right now and you'll immediately recognize machine number one, Cleopatra by IGT. The Egyptian themed slot with the iconic golden symbols sits on virtually every casino floor in America. And that familiarity is precisely what makes it so dangerous. Maria worked as a cocktail waitress in Atlantic City for 7 years, and she watched the same players return night after night to this exact machine. She'd deliver their drinks, see the hope in their eyes during the free spins bonus, then watch that hope fade as they fed more money into a game that was mathematically designed to drain them. According to former slot technicians, the base game RTP on Cleopatra sits between 85 and 87%, which means for every $100 you put in, the machine is programmed to keep $13 to $15. That might not sound terrible until you understand the volatility structure. The free spin feature on Cleopatra triggers approximately once every 180 spins. When it finally hits, the average payout runs between 30 and 50 times your bet. Do that math for a moment. If you're betting $2 per spin, you're spending $360 just to reach that bonus round, and your average win will be $60 to $100. You're losing $260 to $300 every bonus cycle, but the Egyptian music and the familiar symbols create this false sense of comfort that keeps players anchored to their seats. Former employees report that players consistently mistake the frequent small symbol combinations for almost winning, not understanding that almost winning and actually winning are separated by millions of dollars in programming code. The machine celebrates near misses with the same enthusiasm it reserves for actual wins, and your brain can't tell the difference fast enough to protect your wallet. And if you think Cleopatra drains accounts because it's old technology, machine number two proves that newer doesn't mean better. Dragon Link by Aristocrat represents everything modern slot design has learned about keeping you playing longer. Robert documented his experience with this machine over one weekend, keeping detailed notes of every spin, every bonus trigger, every dollar spent. By Sunday night, he'd burned through $3,200 trying to trigger the hold and spin feature that the machine constantly teased but rarely delivered. The RTP varies by denomination, but former technicians report it typically runs between 87 and 89%. The hold and spin feature that defines this game is programmed to trigger once every 200 to 250 spins, and when it finally hits, those minor and mini progressives that seem so achievable rarely exceed 20 times your bet. Here's what makes Dragon Link particularly insidious. The major and grand progressives that dominate the top of the screen are shared across multiple machines and multiple casinos, which means your individual odds of hitting them are being diluted by every other player on every other Dragon Link machine in the entire gaming network. The link feature creates this illusion of control, making you believe your choices during the bonus matter. When the outcome was determined the microsecond you pressed that spin button. 6 different progressive levels convince your brain that big wins are constantly achievable, while the sound effects and visual celebrations trigger for wins that don't even cover your previous losses. Documentation from Casino Analytics shows that players spend 40% more time on Dragon Link than comparable games. And that's not an accident. Before we continue to machine number 3, I need to tell you something important. These revelations come from people risking their careers and potentially facing legal action for breaking confidentiality agreements. Former employees, slot technicians, and floor managers have shared internal documents and personal testimonies because they couldn't stay silent about what they witnessed. If this information helps you make better decisions, if it saves you even a single losing session, please subscribe to this channel and share this video. The casino industry has massive resources dedicated to keeping players uninformed, and the only way to counter that is by spreading this knowledge as widely as possible. Machine number 3 is where things get darker because this one specifically targets a vulnerable demographic. Walk past the penny slots in any casino and you'll find Cats by IGT with its adorable feline graphics and pleasant chiming sounds. The theme seems harmless, almost childish, and that's entirely intentional. Jennifer worked as a slot attendant for 9 years before she quit, and she still carries guilt about the elderly women she watched play this machine for hours on fixed incomes. She'd see the same faces every week, women in their 70s and 80s, sitting at Cats with their Players Club cards inserted and their Social Security checks converted to credits. The machine was deliberately marketed to female and elderly players, designed to feel safe and non-threatening while it executed the same mathematical extraction as every other slot on the floor. The RTP sits around 86 to 88%, according to former technicians, but what makes Cats particularly cruel is the volatility structure. Low volatility creates this illusion of breaking even. You win frequently enough that your credit balance seems stable, moving up and down rather than steadily declining, and that makes it psychologically harder to quit. The bonus triggers approximately once every 80 to 100 spins, which sounds promising until you realize those bonuses pay an average of 8 to 15 times your bet. You're spending 80 to 100 times your bet to win 8 to 15 times your bet. The math is devastatingly simple, but the adorable graphics and pleasant sounds reduce your perception that you're gambling at all. Stacked wild features show near misses constantly. You'll see 2 reels filled with wild symbols and watch the third reel stop just one position away from a massive payout, not understanding that the position it landed on was exactly where it was programmed to land. Small frequent wins trigger dopamine releases in your brain without producing actual profit, and internal casino reports allegedly show that Cats has the highest time on device metric in its category. Players sit longer at Cats than almost any comparable machine. Jennifer remembers one regular customer, a grandmother named Dorothy, who spent her $800 monthly Social Security check over 6 hours one afternoon, walked away with $60, and genuinely believed she'd had a good session because she'd been entertained all day. The cost of that entertainment was $740, nearly her entire monthly income. But the machine had made losing feel so gradual and pleasant that Dorothy didn't register the devastation until her rent came due. But here's where it gets even more calculated. Here's where it gets. Machine number 4 uses a strategy that former employees call the hope cycle. 88 Fortunes by Shuffle Master, now owned by Scientific Games, dominates casino floors with its bright Asian theme and prominent progressive displays. David documented his experience on this machine during one particularly brutal session, hitting the Fubat jackpot bonus 12 times without winning a single progressive. 12 times he went through the selection process. 12 times he thought this might be the trigger that changed everything. And 12 times he walked away with a small consolation prize, while the progressive amounts continued climbing on the screen above him. The RTP ranges from 86 to 88% depending on denomination, which already positions it poorly. But the 4 progressive levels create this false sense of opportunity that keeps players anchored far longer than they should stay. The Fubat jackpot feature triggers approximately once every 150 spins. And when it finally appears, your odds of winning any progressive are programmed at roughly 1 in 8 triggers. That means 7 out of 8 times you'll go through the excitement of the bonus, the selection process, the anticipation, and you'll win 5 to 10 times your bet instead of a progressive. Most players remember the one time they won a mini progressive, not the 7 times before it when they lost money chasing that exact outcome. The psychological manipulation runs deeper, though. Those gold symbols that trigger the feature must be bet at maximum to qualify for progressives, which forces higher bets than players might otherwise choose. The visual design shows all 4 progressive amounts constantly, burning those numbers into your awareness, making you believe you're always one spin away from a life-changing win. The pick feature creates an illusion of agency. You get to choose which golden coin reveals your prize, and that choice makes you feel like you have control over the outcome when the result was determined before the bonus screen even loaded. Multiple progressive levels suggest progression, creating this sense that you're climbing toward bigger wins when you're actually just cycling through the same mathematical disadvantage at different scales. Former floor managers report that 88 Fortunes generates 30% higher revenue per square foot than average slots. And casino executives specifically request these machines because they know the hold percentage. Player testimony documented by employees describes one regular who lost $7,000 over 3 visits trying to hit the grand progressive. And when he finally hit the mini for $240, he celebrated like he'd won despite being down $6,700 overall. Now, before I reveal machine number 5, which is so predatory that several employees claim they reported it to management with concerns about player welfare, want to show you the first machine you should actually consider playing. This is critical because everything up to this point has been about what to avoid. But you need to know that not every machine on the casino floor is designed with the same level of mathematical aggression. The first machine insiders actually approve of is the Wheel of Fortune Quarter Classic by IGT. And I need to be specific here because I'm talking about the original mechanical hybrid version, not the newer video versions that have flooded casino floors. According to former slot technicians, the base RTP on these classic versions runs between 92 and 94%, which represents a massive difference from the machines we've discussed so far. That true mechanical wheel element is harder to program for maximum house advantage. The transparency of watching an actual physical wheel spin creates odds that are visible and consistent rather than hidden in software code. The bonus wheel trigger odds are clear, the payouts are displayed on the machine glass, and what you see is genuinely what you get. Lower volatility means steadier play. You're not cycling through the same devastating boom and bust patterns that drain accounts on high volatility machines. One former floor manager told us directly that if he saw family members gambling, he'd walk them to this exact machine. These classics are usually placed in older casino sections, away from the main traffic areas, because casinos know they don't generate the same revenue per square foot as the newer video slots. You might need to ask attendants specifically for classic or mechanical versions, because they're being slowly removed and replaced with video versions that look similar, but have completely different mathematical profiles. Here's the critical reality check, though. You're still likely to lose money. The house still has an edge even at 92 to 94% RTP, but you'll lose at a significantly slower rate, which means your entertainment dollar stretches further, and if you do hit a bonus, it's more likely to actually cover the cost of reaching it. Machine number 5. Lightning Link by Aristocrat represents, and 3 different former slot technicians independently used nearly identical language when describing their discomfort watching people play it. Marcus worked slot maintenance in a major Las Vegas casino for 6 years, and he still remembers Anthony's progression from casual player to obsessed regular to broken man. Anthony was a construction supervisor in his mid-40s, married with 2 teenage daughters, when a work injury put him on temporary disability. He started visiting the casino during his recovery, just for something to do, and he found Lightning Link. The hold and spin feature triggered during his second session, and he won about $800 on a $40 bet. That win, Marcus explains, was the worst thing that could have happened to Anthony, because it established a reference point his brain would chase for the next 8 months. Over that period, Anthony lost $43,000. He maxed out credit cards first, then took a second mortgage on his house, telling his wife they needed the money for unexpected medical expenses from his injury. She discovered the truth when the bank called about missed payments, and by then Anthony had already spent the mortgage money trying to chase losses that had compounded far beyond recovery. Marcus watched this progression from his position on the floor. He'd see Anthony arrive sometimes during opening shift at 6 in the morning, and he'd watch him play through his breaks until the machine eventually consumed whatever money Anthony had brought that day. Marcus felt powerless to intervene. Casino policy strictly prohibited employees from discussing player habits or suggesting that someone should stop, and even informal expressions of concern could result in termination for interfering with customer experience. The technical programming on Lightning Link explains why Anthony couldn't stop. The base RTP sits between 86 and 88% according to documentation Marcus reviewed during machine maintenance. The hold and spin feature that defines the game triggers approximately once every 250 to 300 spins, and when it finally appears, the odds heavily favor low-value orbs. Here's the pattern that Marcus noticed after servicing hundreds of these machines. High-value orbs appear more frequently in the initial spins of the hold and spin bonus, creating this moment of extreme possibility when you see 2 or 3 premium symbols lock into place. Then the frequency shifts. The subsequent spins deliver mostly low-value orbs or empty positions, and that initial promise almost never fulfills itself. Players see the potential in those first few positions, and their brains calculate the win they could achieve if the pattern continues. But the pattern is specifically designed not to continue. A former technician, David, provided documentation suggesting the hold and spin uses weighted symbol distribution. After the first 3 positions fill, high-value orbs become mathematically rare, appearing at roughly 1/5 their initial frequency. The grand progressive odds were documented at approximately 1 in 400,000 spins, but players see that progressive amount climbing at the top of the screen and believe it's achievable because the game constantly shows them the mechanism for winning it. 6 different orb values create complexity that masks the true odds. Your brain can't calculate probability across 6 variables while dopamine is flooding your system and music is building tension with each spin. The re-triggering mechanic, where you can earn additional spins during the hold and spin bonus, happens just often enough to maintain hope. You'll re-trigger maybe 1 in every 8 or 9 bonuses, and that occasional extension convinces you that the big win is still possible, still just a few more spins away. Internal casino analytics allegedly show Lightning Link players have a 55% higher reinvestment rate compared to other machines, meaning they play their wins back into the game rather than cashing out. Average session length runs 3.2 hours according to one floor manager's testimony, and players frequently hit the hold and spin feature 4 to 6 times per session, with total bonus wins barely covering the spins required to trigger them. Marcus documented one regular who hit the feature 8 times in a single night, winning maybe 40 times her bet in total bonuses, but she'd spent at least 300 times her bet getting to those 8 triggers. The math was brutal and obvious to anyone watching, but the player left believing she'd had an exciting, almost winning session. And speaking of machines that create an illusion of winning while you're actually losing, machine number 6. Timberwolf by Aristocrat is less known than some of the major titles, but it's often placed near casino entrances where first-time visitors make their initial impressions. Rachel worked as a slot ambassador, specifically tasked with explaining games to new players, and she describes feeling like she was leading people into a trap every time she demonstrated Timberwolf. The machine has what former employees call loss disguised as win programming. And once you understand how it works, you'll never look at slot celebrations the same way again. The RTP sits around 85 to 87%, but the real manipulation happens in the hit frequency. This machine pays out on 40 to 45% of spins, which sounds incredible until you examine what those wins actually return. 70% of those winning spins paid less than your bet amount. You'll bet $2, win $1.20, and the machine will celebrate with sounds and visuals, identical to actual winning combinations. Your brain registers the celebration, the win confirmation, the credit increase, and it releases dopamine accordingly. What your brain doesn't calculate in real time is that you just lost 80 cents while the machine congratulated you for winning. The free spin feature triggers once every 120 to 150 spins, and typically awards 20 to 40 times your total bet, which means you're spending 120 to 150 times your bet to reach a bonus that pays 20 to 40 times your bet. Rachel watched players sit at the Timberwolf for hours, constantly celebrating wins, genuinely believing they were running hot, while their credit balance steadily declined toward zero. She remembers one woman who played for 4 hours straight, laughing and smiling, telling Rachel during a bathroom break that she was winning all night. The woman had started with $500 and currently had $140 in credits. She'd lost $360 while perceiving herself as a winner because she'd won on 180 of her 400 spins. Those 180 wins totaled less than her 220 losses, but her brain had counted celebrations, not mathematics. Security footage review that Rachel witnessed during a player dispute showed this exact pattern constantly. Players would celebrate dozens of wins per hour while their balances moved in only one direction. According to former technician James, the game is programmed with win priority that favors below bet amount symbol combinations. The random number generator produces outcomes within expected RTP parameters, but when multiple possible results exist within that range, the software prioritizes combinations that pay less than the triggering bet. This creates the maximum number of celebration moments per dollar lost, which extends time on device and increases total revenue. Rachel's testimony included this statement: "I had to explain the game with a smile while knowing most people wouldn't understand they were losing, even when winning." One floor manager's records allegedly showed Timberwolf had the lowest player awareness of loss ratio, meaning players consistently overestimated their performance compared to actual results by the widest margin of any machine in that casino. Now we're getting to the final three machines. And if you think what you've heard so far exposes aggressive tactics, wait until you hear about machine number 7, where we reveal the mathematical deception hidden in plain sight. Machine number 7. Buffalo Gold Revolution by Aristocrat sits as, and the Revolution designation isn't marketing language about exciting gameplay. Former employees reveal this term originated from internal company documentation, describing optimized hold percentage, a technical way of saying they engineered this machine to extract money more efficiently than its predecessors. Thomas worked as a slot shift manager for 11 years before he quit, and he cites one specific player's trajectory as the primary reason he left the industry entirely. Linda was a 62-year-old retired teacher who received $50,000 in life insurance after her husband died from cancer. She started playing Buffalo Gold Revolution about 3 weeks after the funeral, using the casino as an escape from grief and an empty house, and Thomas watched her decline over 6 months until that entire $50,000 was gone. He remembers the first time she hit a significant bonus, maybe 6 weeks into her regular visits, when she triggered free games with 4 gold buffalo symbols and won around $2,400. She took photos of the screen, called her daughter from the casino floor, talked about her luck finally changing after such a difficult year. Then she stayed for another 4 hours and left that session down $800 overall, though she remembered it as a winning night because that one bonus had been so exciting. Thomas approached his casino host manager after about 4 months of watching Linda's progression, suggesting they might want to have someone from player development check in with her, maybe offer some resources about responsible gaming. His manager's response was direct. "She's an adult making her own choices, and unless she requests help, we don't interfere with customer experience." Thomas quit 2 months later, and Linda's story was the specific example he cited in his exit interview. The technical breakdown of Buffalo Gold. Revolution explains why Linda couldn't recognize her situation until the money was completely gone. The base RTP runs between 85 and 87%, and the volatility structure creates extreme dry spells between bonus triggers. The longest documented stretch that Thomas personally witnessed was 380 spins without any bonus trigger whatsoever, just relentless consumption of credits, with nothing but small base game wins that never accumulated to meaningful amounts. Free games trigger approximately once every 180 to 250 spins, and when you finally hit the bonus with minimum symbols, just 2 gold buffalo, your average payout runs 15 to 25 times your bet. Premium triggers with 5 or more gold buffalo occur roughly once every 800 to 1200 spins, and players anchor their expectations to those rare massive wins rather than the mathematical reality of their average session. The gold buffalo symbols during free games use weighted distribution across the reels, though players never see this information displayed anywhere on the machine. Former technician David explained the specific breakdown during his testimony. The first reel shows gold buffalo at approximately 1 in 8 positions, creating frequent appearances that establish your expectation of symbol frequency. The second reel drops to 1 in 12 positions, Third reel, 1 in 18. Fourth reel, 1 in 25. Fifth reel, 1 in 35. Your brain watches that first reel and assumes the odds are consistent across all positions, but the actual probability of a 5 buffalo trigger is exponentially worse than it appears. You'll see gold buffalo land on the first reel constantly during free games and interpret that as almost winning, not understanding that almost winning on a weighted reel system is functionally identical to not winning at all. The revolution wheel feature that appears before free games creates an illusion of control, offering apparent choices between different bonus types. But analysis of the expected value across all options shows they're essentially identical. You're choosing between different presentation styles of the same mathematical disadvantage. Progressive revolution levels create a false sense of advancement, making you believe you're building towards something when you're actually just cycling through the same extraction mechanism at different scales. Sound design uses crescendos that peak before payouts, building maximum anticipation for results that consistently disappoint relative to the buildup. Thomas kept informal records during his final year, tracking Buffalo Gold Revolution performance against the original Buffalo machines that were still on the floor. Revolution players averaged $1,200 in losses per visit compared to $600 on original Buffalo, and session times ran 40% longer. The reinvestment rate, measuring how often players put wins back into the machine, reached 78% on Revolution, among the highest metrics Thomas had ever documented. Casino management received internal communication, according to employee testimony, instructing them to replace original Buffalo and Buffalo Gold machines with Revolution versions, positioning the change as offering players a new experience with updated features. The actual change represented a significant RTP reduction and volatility increase, but players familiar with earlier versions didn't recognize the mathematical difference because the theme and basic gameplay looked similar. Thomas's testimony about Linda's final session still affects him. She hit free games with 4 gold Buffalo one afternoon, won $2,400 again, nearly identical to that first big win 6 months earlier. She took photos, celebrated, stayed for 4 more hours, and left that day down $800 overall. She remembered it, as another winning session posted the win photos on social media, while Thomas knew she just lost $800 more of life insurance money that was supposed to support her retirement. Now, before we get to the final 2 machines on this list, including one that represents a future trend that has industry insiders genuinely concerned about where slot design is heading, let me show you the second machine you should actually consider if you're going to gamble. Jacks or Better Video Poker exists in various manufacturer versions, and while it's not technically a slot machine, you'll find it on most casino floors. Multiple former casino employees cite this as the most honest game available, and the reasoning comes down to transparent mathematics. The RTP on full-pay jacks or better with perfect play is documented at 99.54%. That's not insider testimony or alleged documentation. That's publicly verifiable mathematical fact. The strategy for optimal play is available free online, and no hidden programming or weighted symbols exist because the game deals from a standard 52 card deck with publicly known probabilities. The pay table displays exactly what you'll receive for each hand combination, and what you see is precisely what you get. Your decisions genuinely affect outcomes, unlike slots where the result is predetermined before reels stop spinning. Patricia worked as a slot floor manager for 14 years, and she states directly that video poker was always her recommendation to anyone who asked. The casino still makes money because that 0.46% house edge compounds over time, and most players don't use perfect strategy, which drops actual RTP to around 95%. You can still lose in the short term despite favorable odds because variance exists in any gambling. But if you're gambling anyway, this offers the best mathematical shot on the floor. These machines are often placed near bars or in low traffic areas because casinos know educated players seek them out, and they generate less revenue than slots, so they receive lower promotional priority. You need to find full pay versions specifically, meaning 9 coins for full house per 1 coin bet, 6 coins for flush per 1 coin bet, and the pay table displays clearly on screen. Maximum coin play is required for optimal royal flush payout. And without learning basic strategy, which takes about 2 hours of study, your advantage disappears. Former pit boss Michael summarizes it simply. If you're gambling for entertainment, video poker costs you the least per hour of entertainment. And that's not opinion, it's mathematics. Now we're down to the final two machines you should never play, where machine number 8 represents everything wrong with modern slot design, and machine number 9 is what has former employees genuinely worried about the industry's future. Machine number 8, Game of Thrones. Penny slots by aristocrat and multiple employees use the word predatory without any prompting when describing this machine during separate interviews. Sarah worked as a cocktail server for 9 years, and she witnessed an incident during a bachelorette party that perfectly illustrates the deception built into penny denomination marketing. 6 women in their early 30s arrived on a Friday night, celebrating before their friend's wedding, and they specifically chose penny slots because they wanted to have fun without spending serious money. Each woman started with $50, $300 total for the group, and they sat side by side at 6 Game of Thrones machines, positioned in a row near the main casino entrance. 4 hours later, that entire $300 was gone, and Sarah watched the confusion spread across their faces as they tried to understand how penny slots had consumed their money so quickly. The deception starts with the denomination terminology itself. Penny slots are technically accurate because the base denomination is 1 cent, but that description obscures the actual cost structure that most players never examine until their money disappears. The minimum bet on Game of Thrones requires 1 cent per way to win, multiplied by 243 ways, multiplied by a 2-credit minimum multiplier, which creates a $4.86 minimum bet per spin. Players hear penny slots and their brains anchor to that penny concept, not understanding that ways to win is fundamentally different from traditional pay lines. Most casual gamblers don't know what ways to win means, and casino marketing deliberately uses this confusion. That $4.86 minimum bet per spin is comparable to dollar denomination machines, but players approach it with the mindset that they're playing pennies, which creates a massive psychological disconnect between perceived risk and actual cost. The RTP sits around 85 to 87%, according to former technicians, and the 243 ways to win structure increases hit frequency while decreasing individual win sizes. You'll win often, but those wins will be small. And the math works exactly like Timberwolf, where wins frequently pay less than your triggering bet while the machine celebrates. Free spins trigger approximately once every 200 spins, and average bonus payouts run 25 to 40 times your bet. At that $4.86 minimum, reaching the bonus costs roughly $972, and your average return will be $121, 50 cents to $194.40. You're losing $777.60 to $850.50 per bonus cycle. But the penny denomination has convinced you this is low-stakes gambling. 4 progressive levels display prominently at the top of the screen, and the Game of Thrones license creates familiarity and trust that gets exploited for maximum revenue extraction. Those progressives are shared across entire casino networks, sometimes linking multiple casinos across different properties or even different cities, which means your individual odds of hitting major or grand are astronomically low. Mini and minor progressives hit with some frequency, but they rarely exceed 10 times your bet, providing just enough occasional excitement to maintain engagement. Character-based bonuses create an illusion of variety because you might trigger Baratheon free games or Lannister free games or Stark free games, but analysis of the expected values shows they're mathematically similar, just different presentations of the same house advantage. A former slot floor manager explained how casinos deliberately spread misinformation about penny slots through vague marketing materials and by discouraging floor staff from explaining true cost per spin. Player education materials focus on the excitement and entertainment value rather than mathematical realities, and employees who provide too much detail about actual costs sometimes receive coaching about maintaining positive customer experience. Sarah's testimony describes players regularly expressing genuine shock when checking their remaining credits, asking how they lost $200 so fast when they were only playing pennies. The average session on Game of Thrones runs 45 to 90 minutes before complete credit depletion, and internal analytics allegedly show this machine has the highest time to complete loss efficiency, meaning it drains accounts faster relative to player perception of time spent than comparable games. Player tracking data mentioned in testimony shows the average player starts with $100, plays for 68 minutes, and cashes out $8 to $12, despite losing 88 to 92% of 8 to I. Their starting bankroll, players often describe the experience positively because it lasted over an hour, which feels like reasonable entertainment value. Sarah specifically remembers those bachelorette party women expressing confusion and disappointment as they realized their $300 was completely gone. One of them actually cried, not because of the money necessarily, but because they'd planned this as a fun, low-risk activity, and instead they'd lost everything in what felt like a short time. They'd thought penny slots meant penny bets, and the disconnect between marketing terminology and mathematical reality had cost them an experience they'd planned to enjoy. The licensing exploitation runs deeper than simple brand recognition. Popular intellectual properties like Game of Thrones, The Walking Dead, and Star Trek are deliberately placed on machines with poor RTP because player recognition and trust can be monetized through lower payouts. Development costs for licensed games get passed to players through reduced return percentages, and casinos know that fans of these properties will play the themed machines regardless of performance. Sarah's final testimony statement was this: "I watched those women having fun, not understanding that their cheap entertainment was costing $75 per hour each. When they realized everything was gone, the mood completely shifted. And I felt complicit in something that was technically legal but felt fundamentally deceptive." Machine number 9 isn't a single title, but an entire category that represents the future of slot design, and it has former casino employees genuinely worried about where the industry is heading. Skill-based bonus slots are currently in testing phases across select casinos with titles like Space Invader Slots, Danger Arena, and Zombie Apocalypse, offering video game-style elements that appear to give players control over outcomes. Kevin worked as a game designer on early skill-based slot prototypes before he left the industry over ethical concerns, and his testimony provides insight into why these machines are potentially more dangerous than anything currently on casino floors. The premise seems player-friendly, marketed as skill matters and play better win more, suggesting that gaming ability can overcome house advantage. But the mathematical reality tells a completely different story. The base game remains pure random number generation identical to every other slot machine, meaning your skill has zero impact on the primary gameplay that consumes most of your money. The skill bonus rounds trigger once every 100 to 150 spins, and these segments offer shooting galleries or matching games or timing challenges where your performance theoretically affects the payout. Perfect skill execution might improve that specific bonus outcome by 20 to 30%. Which sounds significant until you understand that the bonus represents only a small fraction of overall RTP. Kevin's testing data showed that perfect skill play might improve overall RTP from 87% to 87.4%. A virtually meaningless mathematical difference that creates a massive psychological difference because players believe they can beat the system. Kevin's testimony explains the testing results that ultimately drove him from the industry. Players who performed perfectly on skill bonuses stayed 60% longer and bet 40% more because they believed they had an edge while the actual mathematical advantage was less than 0.5%. These machines specifically target younger players aged 25 to 40 who grew up with video games and feel confident in their gaming abilities, exploiting that confidence to create extended play sessions with higher bet amounts. Traditional gambling warnings don't resonate with this demographic because they perceive the activity as gaming rather than gambling, and that distinction matters tremendously for how they approach risk and recognize problem behavior. Skill improvement creates investment beyond financial stakes, where players practice to get better, study patterns, develop strategies that feel meaningful but affect outcomes only marginally. Casino testing in Las Vegas and Atlantic City showed players on skill-based machines averaged 45% longer sessions than traditional slots, placed higher per spin bets due to confidence in their abilities, and exhibited lower voluntary stop rates because they wanted one more attempt to improve their performance. Former casino host Michelle watched beta testing and describes players who wouldn't normally touch slots spending hours on these machines, talking about getting better and improving strategy while the house edge remained virtually identical to standard slots. They didn't feel like they were gambling, they felt like they were gaming. And that psychological reframing eliminated the natural caution that keeps some people from excessive slot play. Industry projections suggest major manufacturers plan widespread rollout within 5 years, potentially replacing 30 to 40% of traditional slots with enhanced versions featuring app connectivity, tournament structures, and achievement systems that further blur the line between gaming and gambling. Former employee Kevin's final statement before leaving the industry captures the concerns shared by multiple former workers. He told his supervisor directly, "We're not innovating gambling, we're designing a more effective addiction delivery system." His supervisor's response was equally direct. "That's literally always been our job." That exchange convinced Kevin he needed to leave, and his testimony about skill-based slots focuses on the vulnerability of a new demographic that doesn't recognize traditional gambling risks because the presentation feels so different from what they associate with casino games. The future that concerns former employees isn't just about worse machines. It's about reaching people who previously avoided gambling by redesigning the experience to match their entertainment preferences while maintaining the same mathematical disadvantage that's always defined the industry. We've just exposed 9 machines that casinos position strategically throughout their floors. Machines that former employees describe as mathematically aggressive, psychologically manipulative, or designed to obscure the true cost of play. Cleopatra drains accounts while hiding behind nostalgic familiarity. Dragon Link and Lightning Link use progressive displays and hold and spin features to create hope cycles that keep players anchored through devastating losing streaks. Cats targets vulnerable demographics with pleasant aesthetics that disguise brutal mathematics. 88 Fortunes forces maximum bets while providing progressives so rarely that the consolation prizes become the actual expected outcome. Buffalo Gold Revolution optimizes every element of its predecessor to extract money more efficiently, while players believe they're experiencing an upgraded entertainment product. Timberwolf celebrates losses as wins until your brain can't distinguish between the two. Game of Thrones penny slots exploit denomination terminology to charge dollar machine rates, while players think they're risking pennies. And skill-based slots represent a future where gaming confidence gets weaponized against a demographic that doesn't recognize they're gambling until the money disappears. These testimonies came from real people who spent years inside the industry, watching real players lose real money on machines they helped maintain, program, or monitor. Floor managers who couldn't intervene despite watching someone's life savings drain away over months. Slot technicians who serviced machines knowing the weighted real configurations made near misses appear far more frequently than mathematics would naturally produce. Cocktail servers who delivered drinks to the same faces in the same seats night after night, watching hope fade into mechanical repetition. Casino hosts who were explicitly instructed not to offer resources about responsible gaming unless specifically requested because intervention might interrupt customer experience. These people risked professional relationships, potential legal consequences, and industry blacklisting to share what they witnessed. And now you possess information that casinos spend significant resources trying to keep obscured. The two machines you should actually consider represent transparency in an industry built on complexity that masks simple mathematical realities. Wheel of Fortune Quarter. Classic offers mechanical elements harder to optimize for maximum extraction, with RTP in the low 90s rather than mid 80s, and odds visible on physical glass rather than buried in software code. Jacks or Better Video Poker provides the best mathematical proposition available on any casino floor, with documented RTP above 99% for perfect play, publicly available strategy, and pay tables that show exactly what you'll receive for each possible hand. Both options still favor the house because that's how gambling works at a fundamental level. But if you're choosing to gamble anyway, these represent informed decisions rather than walking blindly into the most aggressive revenue extraction tools the industry has engineered. The casino industry continually optimizes every element for player retention and maximum revenue generation. Every sound frequency is tested for dopamine response. Every visual celebration is calibrated to trigger regardless of whether you've actually profited. Every button placement, every seat ergonomic detail, every algorithmic decision about when to show near misses versus actual wins. All of it gets refined through extensive data analysis and psychological research. Employee testimonies reveal deliberate strategies to obscure true costs behind terminology like ways to win and penny denomination. Complexity masks straightforward mathematics, where the house maintains an edge that compounds inevitably over time. The gap between what players perceive and what actually happens mathematically is where casinos generate their profit, and every design innovation in the past 2 decades has focused on widening that gap. Everything we've discussed operates within legal parameters established by gaming commissions that focus on technical fairness, verifying that random number generators produce truly random results within stated probability ranges. But those regulations don't require transparent communication about actual costs or realistic outcome expectations. Player education isn't mandated and is sometimes actively discouraged because informed players are less profitable players. The industry doesn't need to cheat when the mathematics alone guarantee profit, but the psychological design accelerates that mathematical inevitability, making it work faster and more efficiently than simple probability would achieve on its own. Information provides your only defense against systems designed by teams of psychologists, mathematicians, and software engineers specifically to separate you from your money as efficiently as possible while keeping you entertained enough to continue. Casinos rely on players not understanding what we've just covered, not recognizing the weighted reels or the shared progressives or the celebration sounds for below bet wins. Every former employee interviewed emphasized the same core truth. Educated players make better decisions, and better decisions mean slower losses, more realistic expectations, and earlier recognition when entertainment crosses into problem behavior. If this information changes how you approach casino floors, if it helps you recognize machines to avoid or understand the true cost of games you choose to play, subscribe to ensure you don't miss future content that continues exposing industry practices. Share this with anyone you know who gambles because this knowledge could save them hundreds or thousands of dollars in a single visit. Comment about your experiences with any of these 9 machines, whether the information here matches what you've witnessed, whether you've seen the patterns we've described. The next video will expose casino floor layouts and the specific psychology behind where machines are placed, why certain games appear near entrances while others hide in corners, and how traffic patterns get engineered to maximize revenue per square foot. Thank you to every former employee who risked professional consequences to share these testimonies, who couldn't stay silent about what they witnessed, who believe that players deserve to understand what they're actually participating in when they sit down at these machines. Remember that the house always maintains an edge, always, across every game on every floor in every casino. That's not opinion or insider revelation. That's the fundamental business model that makes the industry profitable. This video isn't about beating casinos because that's not mathematically possible in the long term. This is about not getting beaten as badly, about making informed choices, about understanding that entertainment costs money and gambling is expensive entertainment that should never be confused with income opportunity. Set strict limits before you play, limits you can genuinely afford to lose, and when those limits are reached, walk away regardless of whether you're winning or losing in that specific moment. If gambling stops being fun, if you find yourself chasing losses or hiding spending from family, if the entertainment becomes compulsion, stop immediately and seek resources designed to help with problem gambling behavior. Knowledge protects you, but only if you use it.